Okay, so we're going to pick up with our discussions of the issues of problems of water travel in the early part of American history. Yesterday we discussed the idea of problems of travel on the land with roads and things like that. So now we pick up with issues on water travel. So obviously water travel was sort of like the highways of their day, but they did have issues. And so the first one would be basically currents. Currents in the early American river systems were pretty strong, and obviously they did not have machines to fight those currents. So if you're only shipping in one direction, then that's fine, but obviously currents were an issue. Also in the book, they do discuss the issue of directions of rivers. So in the eastern half of the United States, the need was for rivers to flow from the east to the west to help out new pioneers and basically settlers to basically be a conduit to get them to the west. The problem was most of them needed that east-west, but they were actually flowing north-south. So if we just take a second here to look at a map, if you look here, you can sort of see major river systems here in the northeast, and obviously that's one of the major parts. You just see the Kennebec that's up in Maine, Connecticut that cuts through and is part of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and obviously through Connecticut, and emptying out down here into the Long Island Sound. Obviously the Hudson. So you can sort of see they all flow north-south. You got the Delaware, which is, of course, a usable river up through a certain area of Pennsylvania. The Susquehanna's here, but of course, the Susquehanna is not a usable river for navigation purposes, even at the time. So the idea is that you could cross it, but the idea you could not really get ships on the Susquehanna. You could only get little barges that go back and forth across it because of its changing geography on the bottom. It's not a navigable river. The Potomac down here flows from the west to the east, obviously into the Chesapeake, so that's not very helpful. You have obviously the Allegheny and the Monongahela rivers here. Strangely enough, this one flows from the south to the north and creates the Ohio. Now, the one thing that's unique about the Ohio, and I have it right here, is it's the only one that flows west. So if pioneers could make it to Pittsburgh, here was an easy kind of area to depart for points west. Ohio, Indiana territory, Illinois, the Midwest, the junction up with the Mississippi River. So those are some of the ideas. So the idea of the direction of rivers were an issue. The other issue with rivers is that you are, of course, tied to Mother Nature and the issues of flooding. So if rivers were around, you could use them just as long as the rivers did not flood. And so if weather changes, then that would impact the economy. And so the idea of flooding made them somewhat unreliable, because if you know anything about being on rivers, you cannot be on them when the river gets high and there's too much water flowing into it. It's a recipe for disaster. And so flooding, of course, was an issue then, and there's nothing really that they could do to fix those issues. We're now going to move on to the next portion of the slide, or if you have the homework, just flipping it over onto the other side. We're going to talk about improvements. So not only do they mention the issues, but they were going to mention how Americans tried to deal with those challenges. And so the first part we're going to discuss is a improvement in roads. And so early roads in America, as the video that I'm going to show you, hopefully it's going to work here, is basically just sort of extending and improving on early trails of Indians. And so you have dirt roads, and then the dirt roads get a little bit better when they can come up with the idea that was back in Europe, which were basically turnpikes or toll roads. So the idea is, we're going to talk more about that later, but these turnpikes and toll roads were really important and essential. So let's just watch this short video.
Hi, I'm Lauren Fix, the car coach. Over the years, roadways have evolved just like cars have evolved. Let's take a closer look at what it used to look like and what it looks like now.
Most of us give very little thought to the roads we drive on every day. We tend to take them for granted, at least until they're closed for repairs, washed out in a flood, or in some ways rendered impassable. Around 800 BC, the city of Carthage on the northern coast of Africa began to use stones for paving roads. Although they may not have been the first to pave their roads with stones, they were among the earliest. Without a doubt, the champion road builders were the ancient Romans, who until modern times built the world's straightest, most engineered, and most complex network of roads in the world. At their height, the Roman Empire maintained 53,000 miles of roadway. Several centuries after the fall of the Roman Empire, 18th century England developed a method of road building that required digging a trench, installing a foundation of heavy rock, and then surfacing with a 6-inch layer of gravel. During construction, the center of the road was raised, producing a crown that allowed water to drain off. As European settlers migrated across the Atlantic to the Americas, they found themselves faced with the almost total lack of roads. In Europe, they had at least Roman roads to use as a foundation for rebuilding. In America, there were only Native American trails, and while they were long and quite extensive, they were also very narrow and allowed only for single-file passage of foot traffic. America's earliest roads were not easily accessible, even for horses and wagons, and the advent of the motor car changed the roadway for everyone. The roadways we see today utilize recycled rubber and pavement so that the roads are smoother. Expansion joints have also been added to protect the life of the roads. Just about any drive we take today provides concrete evidence that the road is constantly evolving. I can't help but wonder what our roadways will look like 100 years from now. For more information, go to our website.
Okay, we're going to pick up and just end here. As you can sort of see in the picture and the title, this is a scene from the Lancaster Turnpike here in Pennsylvania, right before the turn in the 19th century, the 1800s. So as you can sort of see, here you have a place where people can sort of stay overnight and get refreshments and get food. There can be a place for the horses to get resupplied, but this kind of is an idea of like almost a bus of the late 1790s. You can sort of see wagons and things like that. But this was a improvement of the time. So the Lancaster Turnpike connected Lancaster with Philadelphia, or vice versa. And so this was considered a great improvement because you could do that distance in 2 days' time. Yeah, that was considered an improvement. 2 days to go the distance. So we really appreciate the time that, of course, our automobiles get us there much faster. If you look over here on the right side and think, why is that here? No, it's not a headstone. This is, of course, marking the mileage on the turnpike and how far it is going to be until the next place. So we're going to end it here, and we'll pick up more with the emergence of turnpikes in America.